All right, so now let's do the second simulation for this. So on our VFX folder, we can select the NS force field beam, Control D, and let's rename it as NS force field sphere. Let's turn off the gas emitter for now, so we can see just the particles. So enable the sprite renderer. And we basically need these particles to be emitted on top of a sphere shape to create that force field ball. So shape location, we can increase the sphere radius here to maybe 100. Let's turn off the velocity for now so we can just see where the particles actually are, and increase their lifetime to maybe 1 second. So we need the particles to stick to the edge of the sphere. So again, sphere surface distribution, I'll set that all the way to 1. So now the particles are just along the edges. And then we have this hemisphere distribution. And you'll see that as I lower the y-axis, I just get basically half of the sphere this way. So we want just a little wedge, just like this. And then we need to rotate it. So the rotation mode here we can set to axis angle. And the rotation axis, I believe, needs to be -1, right? So now if you go back into your scene and you drag the force field in here, you should be looking at something like this right now. I think we need the sphere to be a touch bigger. So sphere radius, let's do 125. Yep, that looks about right. Now we're gonna need these particles to collide with our invisible sphere. So I'll add under particle update, let's search for collision. And then we need to push the particles to the left, point force. So just search for force. Point attraction force is what I want, because basically I want the particles to be attracted to a point behind the force field over here. So attraction strength, let's set that to 100. Attraction radius, let's set that to, 500. So now it's working, and we just need to move this point further back. So I'll just enable this attraction position offset and just move it over, let's say 200. Let's try 400. Right, so now the particles are being pushed back. It's way too strong, so maybe we can just do 10. Extend their lifetime to maybe 1.5 and see what it looks like in the level. All right, so the particles are not colliding with the sphere, and that's because the sphere is invisible and we are colliding based on a depth buffer, right? So if an object is invisible, it actually doesn't get included in the depth buffer, so there's no collision. So we need to set the collisions of this to distance fields. And now they're colliding with the sphere beautifully, finally. So we can move this back, right? So we are starting to get somewhere. I think that the sphere shape needs to be even a bit bigger. So shape location, let's make it 150. For the collision settings, I don't want any friction. I just want it to basically slide right off this sphere. So set the friction to 0, and let's give it 1 for bounce, so it really just bounces off the surface. All right, I feel like I actually want to see the sphere. So let's select the sphere material and just search for default. Let's just give it the default material so we can see where the sphere actually is, and I'll turn off the beam because it's distracting. And we need to stop these particles from getting stuck in the front. So let's add a wind force. So wind force. It's gonna say that it wants to have either drag or aerodynamic drag. Let's pick the aerodynamic drag. So it's gonna add that module. Then it's gonna say that it wants to have that module above Sol forces and velocity, right? So Sol forces needs to be on the bottom because it calculates everything last. And then it's gonna say it wants to align sprites to mesh orientation. That's fine, just click fix issue. And now finally we have a wind force. Okay, the particles are going back. They're not stuck anymore. Let's just make them faster. So increase the wind speed to maybe 300. All right, so this is better. We're starting to get somewhere. We can go back to wind and increase the frequency of the curl noise affecting the wind. So maybe set the frequency to 5. So let's hide the sphere again, meaning materials, invisible, and drag the invisible material in our sphere. Okay, I think that's gonna work. Let's give it more particles and have them die a bit sooner. So spawn rate, I'll just set that to 10,000. Initialize particle lifetime, let's do maybe 0.8. So let's add the fire and see what this looks like all fired up. So we should have everything ready to go. Set fluid source attributes is here from last time, so we can just enable the grid. And yeah, two issues right away. Again, the temperature is way too bright, and also it's getting cut off, so we need to enable draw bounds. Let's go to set fluid attributes, temperature, let's do just 0.01. Emitter summary, we need to move it on the x-axis, so maybe 0.3, 0.25. Nice, and we need to extend it on the x-axis, so 1200. Nice, now we're starting to get those beautiful flames like I had in the trailer. Let's extend it on the z-axis higher, and even more on the x-axis, so 1500. Alright, so I just ended up doing 0.013 for the temperature to get just the right amount of brightness over here. And if I look at it in our viewport, we are almost there at this point. Let's enable our beam to see what it looks like all together. But I think the beam could be just a little bit lower. So that's looking pretty cool. I think we can hide the bounds and also push this fire to the left more with some wind force. So I will go to emitter summary and uncheck draw bounds. Make sure that you save all, because again, it can crash when you're doing these simulations. Let's hide the particles, so turn off the sprite renderer, and then we can go to emitter summary, forces, calculate wind. And for the wind magnitude, let's try maybe 100. I think this is not a bad look. I kind of like this. Alright, so this will be our final result for part 2. We are almost there. And in the next video, we're gonna add some embers and do some final tweaks.